Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I am so happy you decided to join me tonight. I know that I just decided to come on here and talk about this, but actually this is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I actually had the date May 27th when I scheduled this video, but I decided that it wasn't time yet for me to discuss this, and I was just waiting for the right time to do it. So I'm so happy to see everybody. Thank you for joining me. I see you all. My Gavanin indeed. So this video is really just going to be me talking about some experiences as of late and some kind of new awakenings, I would say. Some of you might be experiencing this, and some of you might be entering into this kind of phase. But I wanted to talk about the subject of co-creation and what it truly means to me. And I have J.R.R. Tolkien to thank because part of the way that he describes co-creation, he calls it sub-creation in his letters. It really helped me to actually see a different perspective. I wouldn't say that I have gone too far down the road of thinking solely that enlightenment or spiritual awakening has one type of destination and one layer to it. But his words definitely helped me see the next step, the next layer to everything. So I wanted to read you this, and then we can talk about it in a little bit more depth. So Tolkien says, I dislike allegory, the conscious and intentional allegory. Yet any attempt to explain the purport of myth or fairy tale must use allegorical language. And of course, the more life a story has, the more readily will it be susceptible of allegorical interpretations. And I just want to explain that some of you may not know, but a lot of times Tolkien kind of got called out or sometimes criticized for using Lord of the Rings as an allegorical work of art, in that it was pushing either Christian ideas into the public, or it wasn't Christian enough for some Christians and Catholics. So Tolkien's life, after he published his books and if they became published and the public could read them, much of these letters are to people that often wanted to congratulate him on a job well done, but also to criticize him or to ask questions further into his sense of spirituality. Because Lord of the Rings has a very type of subtle spirituality, and then you see more of it in the Silmarillion. And in this particular letter, if I go back to the date here, this is from a letter to Sir Stanley Unwin, September 14th, 1950. And then he ended up writing to Milton Waldman after he received some pressure to talk about the allegory references, like when Aragorn becomes, the king, and kind of the allegorical symbolism within Lord of the Rings. So he says, I dislike allegory. And I'll go from where I left off. While the better a deliberate allegory is made, the more nearly will it be acceptable, just as a story. Anyway, all this stuff is mainly concerned with fall, morality, and the machine. Or, I'm sorry, mortality, not morality, mortality and the machine. With fall inevitably, and that motive occurs in several modes. With mortality, especially as it affects art and the creative, or as I should say, sub-creative, desire which seems to have no biological function and to be apart from the satisfactions of plain, ordinary biological life, with which in our world it is indeed usually at strife. This desire is at once wedded to a passionate love of the real primary world, and hence filled with a sense of mortality. And yet unsatisfied by it, it has various opportunities of fall. And when he writes fall, it's like the capital F for fall from grace. It may become possessive, clinging to the things made as its own. The sub-creator wishes to be the Lord and God of his private creation. He will rebel against the laws of the creator, especially against mortality. Both of these alone or together will lead to the desire for power, for making the will more quickly effective, and so to the machine or magic. By the last I intend all use of external plans or devices, apparatus, instead of development of the inherent inner powers or talents, or even the use of these talents with the corrupted motive of dominating, bulldozing the real world, or coercing other wills. The machine is our more obvious modern form, though more closely related to magic than is usually recognized. I have not used magic consistently, and indeed the elven queen, Galadriel, is obliged to remonstrate with the hobbits on their confused use of the word, both for the devices and operations of the enemy, and for those of the elves. I have not, because there is not a word for the latter, since all human stories have suffered the same confusion. But the elves are there in my tales to demonstrate the difference. Their magic is art, delivered from many of its human limitations, more effortless, more quick, more complete. Product and vision is unflawed correspondence, and its object is art, not power, sub-creation, not domination, and tyrannous reforming of creation. It's not that. The elves are immortal, at least as far as this world goes, and hence are concerned rather with the griefs and burdens of deathlessness in time and change than with death itself. The enemy is in successive forms, is always naturally concerned with sheer domination. And he means first it was the Ainur Melkor, and then Melkor became Morgoth in bodily form to the elves. And then after that, that energy went into Sauron, who represented Morgoth, and Melkor. Melkor and Morgoth are the same. So it is a successive, he's saying that the enemy, in capital E, is successive in generation to generation, in successive forms, is always naturally concerned with sheer domination. And so the Lord of Magic and Machines, but the problem that this frightful evil can and does arise from an apparently good root, the desire to benefit the world and others, speedily and according to the benefactor's own plans, is a recurrent motive. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And this is something that I would say, has gone around and around and around in my mind ever since I did first read that. Because my first type of spiritual awakening that I've had, I think the very first level is that when you obtain some type of realization, okay, so I, in my body, is not all that I am. And you have this kind of spiritual realization that you are more than what you appear as on earth. And this is kind of like the first stage, which gets you to start thinking about yourself in a different way. And so my spiritual awakening took me further into different types of philosophies out there. And then you get into the quantum field of it all, as far as looking at everything as energy. And so if everything is energy, it's from a prime source of energy. And so you start to see yourself as part of this, this source of oneness with everything. But what has happened is I have had some time within that phase of actually thinking that I am God, and actually thinking that other people are God in their own way, and that that's what God is. And what I have realized is that through Tolkien's words and through other types of messages that I have gotten, which I can read you one that I received today. And I guess this is why I'm doing this video, is because I was open for this channel of information, and I can read it to you right here, because it is important. I think it really does help me kind of express more of what I'm trying to say. It came through the collective block of the Pleiadians, which is sometimes the spirit guides that I work with. And this was the message that I received, because one of the things that is hard for us on Earth right now to understand is that there is a place where you can believe in God in terms of whatever you believe that God is, and you're also not religious. You're spiritual, but yet you believe in a higher power that exists outside yourself, and that also has the power to do things that you cannot do in your physical form, in your physical ego self. And that this type of consciousness is an awareness that connects us all together, and that wants the best for every soul in terms of soul development. So there is a place where I have kind of always stood, and it's a really alienating type of feeling, because you believe in a God, you believe in a creator or a creation force, but yet you're not religious, and you don't adhere to some of the traditional ways of doing things, and you also don't believe in the certain types of religious rules and ideas. But you can see a creator coming through in a very kind of muddled way through human ego, laws and traditions of cultures back then. And so that's kind of how I read the holy texts of many different worlds or many different cultures. So this was the download that I received, is the Pleiadians, who represent this type of place of consciousness where their entire collective of species basically are very spiritual. They believe in something higher of a power that creates the universe, helps to govern its laws and nature especially. And yet they're not religious. And they also really want humans to kind of let go of some of their religious ideals that have held them back from progression. But here's what I received a message about. No, we are not atheists. Atheists imply to know there is no higher God in charge of this world or universe. We do not embrace the religious notion of God, but we view existence itself as what you call God of Earth and other planets. See the flowers coming through the ground. This to us is a natural law of the universe set in motion. God to us is the force and consciousness behind this perpetual motion of life itself. And we are all extensions of this force, and at some point beyond space and time, we go back to this source, just as leaves fallen from a tree replenishes Earth's soil and becomes one with the tree roots and Earth again. We view ourselves like this, and our spiritual divinity relies on the fact that we aim to act in alignment to the source of all life. We too are the perpetual motion of existence moving forwards. We never destroy unless we believe it aims to destroy life itself, as a darkness spreading on planets and in the universe. We become the hands of this life force. We help humanity to ensure this growth. And at the same time, we are not solely responsible for this growth, as we are only a part of this energy individually. But as a whole, with humanity, as all other souls in the universe, we are the all. As individuals, we are only co-creators with you. Right now, there is a first stage of spiritual awakening on Earth, and many think they are God right now. And we will say they have half of the equation. The other part of God is to not think that you are God, but to keep the force of life itself within you serving a higher purpose. To do all things with this love for the whole cosmos and all beings without the ego knowing you are God. This is the other half of the equation. The undeniable trust in God or faith is ultimately faith in the higher self that is connected to all beings. There is an importance in balance of creation and co-creation, as Tolkien said, with others, to be one with the prime source. You are only a spark of the divine source, as we are too, and it keeps you humble. And in that humility comes a greater power, being part of something more powerful than your ego alone. So I just wanted to read that part right there. And you can go to the university, the Palladian University of Wisdom Facebook page to get more information and see that message if you would like, because I left it on that page today. But if I go back to Tolkien's words, this is what is really the truth, is that there is a temptation when you think that you are creator and sub-creator all as one. And when we do have the misunderstanding of how our existence works, because we can sit there in our life and we can say, okay, so I'm God. And yet, why isn't my life going the way I want it to? You know, when you're sitting there and you're almost blaming yourself because you're at the spiritual point of your spiritual awakening, you should be more in control, right? You should be manifesting more from the place of awareness that you're at. But that's not how it really truly works. And that's something that I have been going through with my mind for a while now. And I've just tried to find a way to talk about it, because I know that the new fad in spirituality is to think that you are God. And I'm here to say that it's only half of the story. The existence, the consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that we believe is our creator or our source of energy, if you want to call it that, is part of us, and we are part of it. And if you took all the souls in the universe, you would get more of a glimmer of what God is, what existence is. But I believe that the reason why we have all these kind of warnings coming from spiritual masters such as J.R.R. Tolkien and other types of spiritual teachers that have told us that there's a temptation there, and it's the first stage of awakening. And then if you can become even more egoless, and you could really fall back into surrender, into a greater power, and you're okay with admitting that, you're okay with admitting to yourself and to your ego that there is a greater power than just you, there's a really great release in that. And so you could start creating more powerfully from this place, because you have the support, because you're open to receive and act in co-creation with it. So what has happened with me recently, as many of you know who do follow my channel, I was part of an organization, and to me it was like a network of minds. But at some point, something either happened in some misunderstandings, or something happened in terms of maybe we never really truly understood each other. Something happened in communication style where it showed that, okay, this is not the network of minds that I'm actually supposed to connect with and create with. And so at that point, I couldn't think about co-creation with those that failed to understand me. And it's not on their own place of failure. It's more just, that's just the word I'm using right now, but it's more just where they are in terms of their perceptions. And that's fine because we never met off of the internet. Isn't that funny? So the whole thing about co-creation has come into my mind where, so the idea of bringing your mind together with others and co-creating is still very important to me. But what's more important is my relationship with the universe and with Earth itself. And then from there, co-creating with that power, with that energy. And I have found personally that it is more powerful than my ego. Because although I can have moments of true clarity, Earth is a really interesting place, and it was created, designed, whatever you want to call it, for this particular reason. You're supposed to be, supposed to be like a veil. There's supposed to be a veil between the material and the spiritual world. And although you can see through to it at times, you're not supposed to live completely in the spiritual world while you're in this material world. There's a lot more to work on still. And so for souls that are looking for a very spiritual experience, they will be constantly dragged back into the material because our society right now runs on a very material mindset. And I'm talking basically the whole world in terms of, the way that our society organizations are run. They're not run in a spiritual way. And even though I can say, yes, we've made some progress, and I think that we are getting better at that in terms of allowing that spiritual truth to penetrate through those corporations, we still have a very, very materially based corporate style of some major corporations. I'm talking energy, I'm talking food, I'm talking economic, I'm talking government, I'm talking all of that. It is not at a spiritual place. So if you're like a mystic soul and you kind of walk the two different lines between the material world and the spiritual world a lot, you can be very frustrated because you see on the other side all this other spiritual truth, but you also are called back down to the material world. And what I have realized is that we are co-creating with each other. We are really just creating this collective as we go. And what we put out there on an individual basis is kind of what we start to create. We'll see our energies being reflected back, but it's not just our own energies. And so this is something that I think that we have to wake up to, is that the first stage, you might think you're God. You might say, okay, so I'm God and we are all God. Great. So now I can start creating my life the way I want. And so you start there and you're like, I'm going to manifest everything I want in my life. I'm going to manifest this. And then you actually look around and you realize, well, wait a minute, I can't get what I want until everybody is kind of on the same page. However, there is a very strong warning about that. The idea that it arises, this is what Tolkien says, is that most of tyrannical ideas, tyrants and dictators, one world governments with, intention to rule and to rule from a place of kind of not an awakened state of spirituality, let's just say that it comes always from a good place in terms of nobody wants to be a tyrant and says, well, I'm going to destroy the world and and I want to kill everybody off. No, that's not what a tyrant thinks. What a tyrant thinks is that I have a better vision of this world in my mind, and I know the way, and I'm going to make people follow this way, or they will be put to death, or they will be thrown into prison because I don't want them in my civilization. So what you learn by all of that is that that is a example of somebody who thinks that they are God. They're playing God. They're playing with the power of creation, but not with the power of co-creating with a higher power that is connected to all beings. Do you see the difference there? So even Tolkien says that the enemy in successive forms is always naturally concerned with sheer domination, and so the Lord of Magic and Machines. But the problem that this frightful evil can and does arise from an apparently good root, the desire to benefit the world and others, speedily and according to the benefactor's own plans, is a recurrent motive. Tolkien was saying that throughout the world, this is how tyrants have acted. This is how people have been, is that they get this vision in mind that is their creation. It's their way of seeing the world. And it's not actually co-creating or sub-creating with others. And so the second type of awakening that I have been experiencing is that I cannot actually do anything in life except if I connect my minds with other souls like you. And this is where it's a really kind of an amazing experience, because you do feel sometimes that you're alone in your own mind. But then when you look out into the world, you see all these other souls that you really truly are meant to connect to and meant to find in some way, and then they can help you, and you just realize you can never do anything alone. So my experiences have been mainly with nature, in terms of when I have been taking some time, when I haven't been making videos, I've just been kind of contemplating within nature and looking at the ecosystem that surrounds me. And what I have realized is that they're following laws that are set for them, that are preset, and they act all in accordance to what is good for the ecosystem, in terms of helping each organism grow to its fullest. And humans are very much like that. I do think that there's a danger in terms of some of the spiritual messages that are being taught out there, such as by the Hyperions, in terms of on Morgue Official, and I've heard other spiritual teachers talk about this. I think that if we get into the mindset, like you are God, and if you just constantly think about that, and you're coming from a place of ego, we will not better the world. We will only just have people acting out their plans or desires from an ego state. And I really mean this when I say this. My true second awakening has come through the idea that I actually cannot actually truly be God until I truly shed my ego. And when I am ready to do that, that is a totally different place of wanting any kind of desires or visions for a better world. Because that is a state of mind where you see everything as exactly the way it's supposed to be. Everything is perfect and aligned. And that is not a place, that a state of mind that I believe collectively we are in right now, that there is still a lot of things that we have to connect our minds together, come together as individual egos, and change the world together in a coexisting vision of tolerance, peace, and unity, but not by just a single vision, not by a single idea about a new world government, or New World Order, or whatever else they're talking about right now. And I think that what I really, really have thought about, and I know that this is basically what the Pleiadians and other types of alien entities that are concerned about humanity want as well, in terms of change does not have to come through oppressive force. Like, we do not have to take away religion. We do not have to take away people's individual rights to make their life choices. We do not have to start to be oppressors in order to get a more peaceful world. And that is really what is about co-creating. It is about trusting that you are actually a creator with other creative beings, and you are going to create the world together. So I think that that is something that I have personally been experiencing. I'm really thankful for it, because I think that it's a more powerful place in terms of creating my life from. I can truly feel an appreciation, a gratitude for a power that's very much like Eru Iluvatar in the Silmarillion, very much in that place of gratitude and thankfulness, and feeling one with it and one with this energy that is connected to Narin, connected to Rain, connected to Pandora. So we're not individual gods. We are sparks of soul consciousness from one being, one consciousness, a sentient awareness in the universe that is growing. And I think that that is something, if I can't label myself as, I can't label myself as part of a religion. I can't, because I don't follow completely the doctrines of it. And this is the mystic's problem, right? We're always in between religions. But we have our own way of experiencing divine oneness. And in some ways, it's more meaningful than sometimes the traditional religious experience. Although I think that for some people, it's just as important. So with our visions of peace, we cannot take away religion. With our visions of peace, we cannot take away a certain type of government choice. And I believe that organically, we're going to have to struggle and evolve through diversity. And that is really important, because we cannot start unifying while we are in a mindset in terms of the people in place in charge right now who have the power to unify the world. Okay, so the ones that do have the power to unify the world. I have not seen enough evidence. I've not seen enough, speeches coming from their soul, coming from their heart, in order to truly kind of unify the world in the way that would be coming from an ego-less way in terms of that objective place. But through nature, you can start to understand this power of co-creation, that you are basically another organism, part of the whole, that is making this collective, and you're bringing it to surface. And I think that when you surrender yourself to this higher power in this way, you can stop being so hard on yourself, in terms of there's a really kind of dark night of the soul that can happen to someone that starts to believe that they are God. And then what ends up happening is their life just doesn't change. They just are not getting the effects or the results that they really want. And that's not a true place of power. The true place of power, I have found, is that when you actually join up in gratitude, in thankfulness, every day for your life, for the beauty around you, for everything that you experience. And then slowly you allow these kind of gifts, these experiences to come into your life, and you're both thankful for the lessons you learn as well as what you have experienced. And I think that that's really important. Now, I'm going to be going back into this book soon in terms of having more discussions about it. And hopefully we will get into it, because this Latin phrase here, nil sine Dio, means not without God. So I would love to know, and when we go into it a little bit more, I want to know, well, who is God to them? And this is where we're going to get deeper into Hermeticism, Gnostics. And let's see, as we go through this, is this the truth that ends up bringing you a sense of inner peace, of gratitude? Or does it just fill your head with knowledge and a false sense of ego, that you are all powerful and you don't need anything else beyond your ego? And I guess what it really is about is, because when we're on earth, we are experiencing our ego. We are actually experiencing it. And although our ego can become very thin and pliable, and you can allow a higher soul to kind of identify with your ego, and you can allow your ego to exist and other egos to exist in a very peaceful way. You can get to that point, but yet we're still coming from ego. We're still that. Can you imagine right now if you had to just grow as big and tall as the universe right now? Like you were just all of a sudden this giant spirit that just looks like you, looks like me, and we just grow tall into the heavens, and then all of a sudden we claim that we are God. That is what it is like when you're on earth and you claim that. And so there's a second layer to that might be the first part, that you are actually part of God, that you are a spark, you're actually a drop in the ocean. And although Rumi has that quote, you're the drop in the ocean, but you're also the ocean. Well, yes, that's the other part too. But in order to become one with the ocean, then you have to have humility. You have to have humility, and you have to allow yourself this grace, this sense of grace, so that you can actually be embraced by the whole. And I hope that makes sense. But that's definitely a spiritual experience that I've been having. And it's put me in a very interesting place, because I can see where some of the problems in the past have happened with spirituality. And I can also see where some of the misunderstandings can happen. And I can also see where temporarily you might be satisfied. There's a really popular video on YouTube you might want to look at. And it's this girl, she's kind of just musing to herself, and she's like, "We are God." And, I watched that a couple years ago. And I even had a series where I talked about "You Are God," and I was trying to go through kind of the, the mystical teachings about that. But what I have realized on a personal level is that is only the first step. That's only the first step. And it's not even a real true step if you are still in your ego state, meaning if you are still somebody that views yourself as your identity and as other people's identity, and that's it, and then you say that you are God. It's a completely different experience when you're beyond space-time, in death, out of body, and then you experience that. So am I saying that there's a little bit of a warning about thinking that? A little bit, but I'm not going to say that, it's evil or it's bad. It might bring you to a place. Can I just be completely honest with you all? Very honest, because I love you, and I I don't want you to experience some of the things that I have experienced. The dark night of the soul, which I don't know if people talk about this, because I know dark night of the soul is, it can be described in many different ways, but what I have experienced the dark night of the soul as, the dark night of the soul is when a soul reaches a place of spiritual knowledge, a spiritual understanding within them, and they're somewhere above their humanity, and yet they're nowhere near oneness with all in terms of God. So they're in this middle state. It's called the dark night of the soul. They don't have true enlightenment, and it actually leaves you into this void place. It's a darkness, a void, where you feel very, very, very alone. Dark night of the soul. You're not one with God, and you're not one with humans. You are all alone on your own level, because you have gotten to this place where you've said, you're God. Okay, so you're God. Great. So you're in this world. You're God. Great. Okay. So enjoy. But you can't. You know, that's the temptation right there. That's not it. That's not the answer. And I've had to go through this process of awakening. So now I'm just trying to warn others, and maybe they have experienced this too. There is another layer to this. There's an entity, there's a consciousness, there's a universal consciousness that has set the laws in motion for nature, for life, for death, for the cycles and the seasons, for everything that you see on each planet, and how nature exists, and how human beings or non-human beings organically evolve. And the laws are really interesting, is that the planets are the evolutionary tools, meaning whatever is in our environment evolves the humans or the organic life. And whatever we mess around with in terms of chemicals and pollutants, that changes our DNA and manipulates us. And then we evolve into that new life form if we have pollutants. So we are in a very interesting time, a crossroads time, where we are kind of deciding the fate in a way of our own species, in terms of where humans are going to go, in terms of what is going to become of them in the future. And many people have their own ideas of what the vision of peace is. So all these type of corporate elite leaders, the cabal, the dark forces in the world of oppression, Big Brother, they're not evil. They simply have their own idea of what peace looks like. And it might not be what peace looks like to you, and it might not be what peace looks like to me. Because as we have learned from tyrants in history, many people die in depopulation schemes. Many people get killed to make sure that you instill a fear so that other people will follow in the footsteps of the tyrant, because everybody's supposed to follow them. They have the perfect vision of peace, I guess, right? That's what Hitler thought. He thought that a world with the Aryan race ruling would be a peaceful world, would be a supreme world, and would catapult the human species into a higher advanced consciousness. And we have learned through this experience that he is not right, that we have a diverse world of ethnicities, cultures, and creeds. And each one has a very unique type of part of the collective through the different types of ways that their energy can put forwards these ideas of what peace looks like. So no, we can't rely on the tyrants of the past, and we certainly don't want to go that direction. Every king, tyrant, or ruler in that way have always thought that they knew what peace was. And to be quite honest, that is very much in me, because I have a very clear definition of what peace looks like in my own mind. And I will say today, I am not going to be a tyrant any longer in terms of in my head mentally. And I think that that is really part of my awakening. Is my second step of awakening is understanding that I am co-creating. I am not creating in terms of I'm creating in my life. I'm definitely creating my life, but I am co-creating with others. And I think that there's a real power in that. And so I thought that that was something that I really wanted to talk about, that will lead us through this book together as we go through it through the years. About the message of creation and what is, I think ultimately the biggest theme in here is what is the difference between creation and co-creation, the individual power versus the united one. And so many of our questions we have right now in society, because a lot of the schemes that we have going on right now are in here in terms of it's the fruits of the seeds that were planted from those that have felt that they had the most peaceful vision of the world in mind. And I guess when it really comes down to like the reason why I guess I can take this objective point of view is like when you're actually truly honest with yourself and you really realize, well, I don't know exactly what everybody's going to want. You know, not everybody is going to want to live in an elven realm, and not everybody is going to want to look like elves, and not everybody is going to want to have that type of experience of the human species. Some people just would like to have something completely different. So what it will probably come down to is that our world will not be united under one vision, but that eventually we will just learn to tolerate each other's diversity. And we will have a unity within the diversity of all the different types of species that we have on the planet, of all the different types of worlds or realms that would be on our planet to live in if we choose. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think that Tolkien's words really hit me, and I've just been doing a lot of, just a lot about thinking about what co-creation really means to me. And I have to tell you, I just feel really at peace. I feel that I have surrendered to a higher power that has been talked about in all of the holy texts. And I feel very close to this power. I feel very one with it. I feel that this is a power that you can always become close to when you meditate or when you sit in nature and when you actually, focus on your inner voice. And I think that that is like so precious of a gift, is that we have this cord that ties us to this higher power at any time we need consultation, at any time we need guidance. It truly loves us. It is us in a way, in a higher place, a higher dimension, but it's also very separate because it's egoless. And it comes from just the objective place. And sometimes you cannot see the plans that has already been kind of created for the universe from your place of mind. And so there's a real power in just surrendering and just falling back into it and trusting in it. And it's just been a really lovely experience. And I would say that it's definitely my second awakening. And so probably from now on, you're going to definitely see me talking about how we can get more in touch with this power, how we can co-create with it, rather than create from the place that we are the creator. We can think of ourselves as creative beings, and I highly recommend that in your own life. But there is another step to it. So I'm just kind of letting you know that there's an important part of the equation that's missing. If you have already just awakened, and especially those who, if you watch the Midnight Gospel on Netflix, there's a part where Clancy's like, I'm awakened, I'm enlightened, I'm enlightened, and now I don't have to do anything. And he is in this state of ego mind from this place of awareness of enlightenment. And what he realizes is that that's not enlightenment. And the mystics of the past, and why I guess I've always labeled myself as a mystic, to help myself identify with what am I on earth, where do I fit? The mystics of the past have always been concerned, like the saints and the heretics, and the Sufis and the Buddhists, and any of the mystics that have been considered as believing in a higher power, but at the same time feeling one with it. And the Gnostic idea is that Gnosticism means to know God. And so when we go through this book, we'll start to get more deeper into, okay, so you know God, Gnostics of the world. So what is God to you? And that's what we're going to get into. And so the interesting thing about mysticism is that it is a strive, it is a struggle, it is a seeking for this divine union. And it doesn't have to be a stressful one. It just means that you spend your time, you enjoy spending your time in life seeking for a union with the divine, instead of just having a regular type of life. It's actually, if you are a mystic, that's kind of your pathway, is to seek for that divine union. And it's a very interesting one. It has led me on some really neat experiences, I would say. But it's not something that everybody subscribes to, and that we have a very large amount of people that are actually part of world religions. And what we are going to ultimately have to realize is that we're never going to be able to get rid of personal beliefs unless we want to start controlling minds and controlling thoughts. And that's not going to be the direction we want to go. So religion is always going to exist, because if we have a sense of spirituality, we're also going to have religion, because there are some people that just process their spirituality in that way. They need the books, they need the religious idols, or the items, the symbolism, all of that, because it's important to them. And we can't strip them away from that. Otherwise, that's when we become the tyrants. So that is where I am with that. And you could take that however you want. Mainly, I guess I'm giving you this message as kind of maybe a warning of just kind of what to look out for if you start to see kind of this tyrannical kind of behavior of where they're trying to strip people of their religion. They're trying to make people believe in a certain type of government. Anytime individual rights are stripped away or are tried to be oppressed, that is coming from a place of ego on the other side, saying, I have the right vision of peace. You don't know peace, and I will oppress you until you follow my vision of peace. And this is a very big danger. This is a big danger when people start thinking, I am God, from our ego self on this earth right now. So it's more important that we keep in the back of our mind that there is a higher power that is beyond this world, beyond even this universe, that actually we are subservient to in a way, where we have to follow the laws of nature that have been placed. We have to. We cannot go against nature. When we start going against nature, we see what happens. We get a consequence in return. We get our natural disasters, our plagues, our diseases, and everything else that you see. And I'm not saying all diseases are actually naturally created, but they're actually introduced inorganically by human hands through pollutants and chemicals and messing with Mother Nature in a way that we weren't supposed to. And this is what causes our DNAs to mutate, and the different types of diseases that we have. And ultimately, we are in the process of changing our DNA right now. Our DNA structure is being changed by all the technology that we have, by the computer screens. Everything that is around us in our environment is actually altering our DNA. How that alters depends on us as a collective, of what we are going to tolerate in terms of what we're going to allow into our collective, and allow it to mutate our genes, allow it to mutate us. So this is the power of co-creation, is that when you start to surrender to a higher power that wants more a sense of freedom, individuality, organic evolutionary process rather than inorganic, that is human created and chemically altered and made. When you follow and align to more of that natural source of energy, and you shun or turn your head from human society that is messing with Mother Nature, that is messing with things from an ego stance and place, and when you turn your head from that and you follow that other power that is higher than that, because it knows the natural laws of existence and it follows that and doesn't mess with that and doesn't manipulate it, doesn't alter it. When we turn our head towards that and we follow that, that is following the pathway of a more, I think, a more uninhibited future for mankind. And that is really kind of the pathway that I follow. And so I think that that is why I am starting to, I guess, have that type of second spiritual awakening, because it's coming at a time where I can sense that there is a need for it in terms of my individual experience with this world and what many of us are experiencing right now. We know very much now about the virus, and we know that there are plans, and we know that there are lots of different schemes and visions of peace that are trying to, come forwards. And we just have to all take a stand together collectively to decide together, what are we going to tolerate as people, and not let oppressive forces dictate us, and to have a sense of freedom, because freedom to me is really what God existence is about, is freedom. And I know that's funny because there's laws of nature and physics that have been set. So is that freedom? But to me, that is still freedom consciously, because we have freedom in how we respond to those laws of nature and laws of physics. We have freedom of how to start to understand those laws better, and to be able to make those laws work for us, such as time travel for laws of physics, and also to start to be able to understand weather and natural disasters, and to understand how to coexist with nature better as a species. And so I do believe that that's why these laws are set in place, is so that we can learn how to work with them, flow with them, and ultimately surrender to this higher power that we are all bound to and is in some way the consciousness of this planet, but as well as all other planets in terms of a collective force of energy that has created this universe by sound waves, frequencies, and vibrations. And if you want to say that, like the Silmarillion suggested, like Eru, that Eru sang everything into existence, or his angels or the Ainur sang everything into existence, then that's a beautiful way of thinking about it too. But yes, this definitely is a really interesting place to be at. Personally, I just wanted to end with one thing. So if many of you have seen the movie The Yellow Submarine by the Beatles, there is a part that hit me as a little girl very, very strongly. Is the, let's see if I can get the lyrics here, is the Nowhere Man. I don't know if you can remember. Let me get a picture of him. I would love to put him up here. Some of you may remember. It's this little creature in the submarine. I might be able to pull it up. Yes. Okay. Let me share it for you. I just have to share it because you're never going to understand if you've never seen it before, and maybe it'll make you want to see it. Can you see it now? So this little guy is called the Nowhere Man. And in the Yellow Submarine movie by the Beatles, I will read you the lyrics here. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but I think that it is important because I do think that the Beatles, they were wise. They were definitely messengers in their own way, and they used music as a way of putting out their messages. Here's the lyrics. He's a real... So here's the thing. Set up the scene. The Beatles end up going to his world, to his universe. And what it is it's just like a white space, field of space. And yet, the Nowhere Man is the god of his own universe. So what can he do? He can pull anything out of his little body, and he starts showing off, and he starts dancing and twirling, and he's so happy. He's like, look at Beatles, I can make anything appear in my universe. And the Beatles start to sense a kind of spark of sadness in him, almost like where basically they can see that he's lonely, and that is where this ego kind of is coming from in terms of trying to get others to notice him and to recognize him for his power. So here's the lyrics here. So he's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't he a bit like you and me? Nowhere man, please listen. You don't know what you're missing. Nowhere man, the world is at your command. But he's as blind as he can be, just sees what he wants to see. Nowhere man, can you see me at all? Nowhere man, don't worry. Take your time, don't worry. Leave it all till somebody else lends you a hand. Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't nowhere man, please listen. You don't know what you're missing. Nowhere man, the world is at your command. So they're trying to say that, great, so he's like God of his own universe, and yet he's so lonely. He's lonely, and he's trying to make friends with the Beatles, and he's trying to show off to the Beatles. So if you get a chance to watch that movie, just watch that part, and then you'll understand why there's a real loneliness in thinking I am God, and then just sitting with that thought. And then there's a second awakening that happens that is more about you're a part of God. You're a part of this creation, your existence itself, and the source of existence is much larger, much bigger, and much more objective, much more out of your personal experience, and loves you, loves each one of us. Every single soul in the universe is loved by this consciousness source. And some people can feel it, but you can't see it, but you can feel it inside. And this is kind of what the religious holy texts have been talking about. And this is what gives a lot of religious and spiritual people solace inside. So yes, there's a little bit of a danger with the idea of thinking that you are it, you are God, because then you end up quite lonely on earth, like a nowhere man in your own little world. And yet you look around and you start wondering, well, why isn't everything working for me? It's because it's not about your own personal manifestation. There's something else going on. You're manifesting, you're co-creating with with another power. And this power is also connected to all of us. And that is your relationship with the universe that determines how close to this feeling and alignment with the divine that you feel. It is your relationship to the world. It is your relationship to the universe, and ultimately your relationship to the prime source of everything that truly matters. Not that you have the gnosis that you are God. But what do you do with trying to reach union with this source that is higher than your ego, that is higher than what you can experience right now? And I think that there's something really powerful in that surrender. So that's it. That's my second awakening, and it's been really great. It's been really great. I don't know if any of you have had a moment of kind of this joy, but I'll tell you, I've had about 3 episodes lately, I would say over the past year or so. And then also in the last few weeks, I had a really powerful one. I don't know what happened, but I just became extremely happy about something that was going on in my life. And I felt all this love come into my body, and I felt this really powerful energy of love, and I broke down crying, and I was like, I love you, God. I love you. It was beautiful. It was like this really beautiful moment and experience. And when I say the word God, I don't attach it to a religion, but it is what I can universally use as a word right now for people to understand me, because I do want those who are religious and those who are non-religious and those who are just spiritual to understand what I am saying, and to connect to them at this level, that there is something else out there, and that we are not a nowhere man in our own little universe, but that we are co-creating with this power. And we are right now being asked to align to this power that is more aligned to organic evolution, natural evolution, rather than trying to manipulate and create things from ego. Many scientists and physicists and corporate leaders and all of that, and technology engineers and robotic engineers and everything like that, right now they are creating new visions for our future. But the question is, are they creating from a place of co-creation with this source, or are they creating from a place of ego, just strictly from imagination of creation, and that's it? So we are, I think, in that moment in time where we're going to have to figure out, well, how are we going to align ourselves back to this natural place of power that really takes away our loneliness. I mean, once you surrender to this feeling, then you're no longer alone like the nowhere man. Then you look around and you see friends and you see equals who are children of the universe, just like you, children of God, as they say. And I think that that is where it becomes a powerful tool to help heal you from your sense of loneliness and the dark night of the soul, where you don't know what to do when you reach a certain moment in your spiritual awakening, and it makes you very kind of depressed, and you start to lose a lot of feelings of, well, is this even important to live? What is even life about? So the dark night of the soul can be something that people can go through when they don't go through their spiritual awakening all the way, and they only get to halfway, and they think they are God, and they stop right there. There's a danger in teaching that just kind of blatantly right now. I think that there's a process that has to happen. And I think that there is it's more important that we come together under a kind of a universal consciousness rather than our own individual consciousness. So I hope that that makes a lot of sense, but I've just been experiencing that. And it's going to be interesting what's going to happen in the future, because I do see how this idea is getting pushed more and more out there. And I've always had myself kind of in the middle, but I can honestly say that I've surrendered, from that thought. I've been awakening, remembering something higher, and I just put it more to words now. And I guess I did it on YouTube with you all. So I'll go to the comments. I'd love to hear from you all. Thank you for joining and just listening to me ramble on here. Nice art on your wall. Thank you, Moldavite. Yes, this is from Art Times. She actually created this for me. She drew this of me, and then she sent it to me. So I hung it up. And you can follow her on Instagram. I can give you her exact address. Sorry, my internet is silly here. It's kind of slow. It's art.timus. So Timas. Artemis. It's actually Artemis. So I love that. And then she has like a little moon symbol. Yeah, she's a great artist, very talented. Thank you. Nurin, this sounds like pantheism with asterisks. Pantheism. Yeah, I mean, pantheism is the idea of that it's like theism and also polytheism, all like everything is God in a way. Like, I mean, yes. Pantheism, let's go to the exact definition here so I can just make sure here if I want to say that. Yeah, it's very much, pantheism is the belief that reality is identical with divinity, or that all things compose an all-encompassing eminent God. Pantheist belief does not recognize a distinct personal God, but instead characterizes a broad range of doctrines differing in forms of relationships between between reality and divinity. Yes, definitely. I think I am a pantheist. I definitely think I am, because I have seen the reflections of God through all sorts of different pathways. So yes, I've always been a pantheist. I would definitely say I am. But there's just a different type of experience I've had, and I don't know if some of you have had this, but it's been a very humbling experience. It's been a very gentle awakening. It's been more of a reminding. It hasn't been something that I felt bad about. It's just that there's been this extra little something else kind of reminding me that, Kimberell, this is not all there is. That there is something else beyond this. And I'm not saying about this experience. I'm saying about the belief that you are God creating is not all there is. There is something more to it. And it is more about sub-creation and co-creation, like J.R.R. Tolkien was talking about. And so the temptation to think that you're the creator can happen to the wrong people in a way, where they start creating from their ego. And I started to feel that within me. I can feel that temptation. I wouldn't become like a tyrant or do anything harmful at all, but it's more about, I could just sense an anger, a frustration in me, where if I don't see the world in the way that I want, and I don't have the peace in the way that I would like, then I don't like the world, or then I'm angry and frustrated. And there's a sense of surrender when you let go of that, when you let go of that need to control and to create the outcome. And I think that that is kind of where I'm at. And maybe that has something about, to do with Elda Lieva, the Elven Spiritual Path. I kind of joined minds and started that organization thinking that, okay, so this is a way where we can march towards this future in an elven, beautiful way, a pathway. And I guess what I have realized is that there are more than one ways to get that elven consciousness out there. And I kind of always knew that, but there's a real temptation in terms of trying to unify things. And so the sense of freedom that you experience is something really, it's freeing. It really is. It's like I'm just allowing people to have their freedom. I'm just allowing people, if you want to join TL Lieva and do their rituals, that's great. If you want to hang out with me, that's wonderful too, and it's like I'm just enjoying freedom, and I feel closer to this beautiful source of energy that allows all souls to freely live, to reincarnate, to reach a soul development, and to rejoin back with it one day. It's just a beautiful source of energy. And I've been feeling it really strongly lately. And the system is holding us back from collectively co-creating with our brothers and sisters. Yeah, it seems that it's like, I don't know about you, but like so you're born into the world and then that there are people that are in these places of power that you've never met, you don't know anything about, and yet they're making the decisions for the world. They're making the decisions for society, and sometimes those are just not the decisions that I would make. So it can become very frustrating when you are hearing this in the news, when you are, experiencing this. And you're right. It's like they're creating and we're not co-creating. And I believe that really kind of the new earth ideal is more where we're all co-creating together. So in a way, it is like a form of democracy, maybe not democracy that we have right now, but it is a form of democracy where it is a collective co-creation, not some of us are creating, some of us are really creating and taking over the collective, and some of us are just kind of creating within our own lives, and that's it. There's a sense of powerlessness that we have there. So I agree. You can only create with so much efficiency as a single hub of light. Yes, exactly. I like that a lot. Yeah, because it's like you're one candle, right? You're one candle. But when you put all your flames together and when you rejoin with the fire of the sun, you become even more part of something more powerful. And there's more of a place of personal power in that place. It's like you're not limited because you tap into this kind of infinite reserve. Yeah, exactly. Rain. Due to some of the dense energies of this planet, going through a real spiritual awakening can be challenging. Yes, I agree. It definitely can. And there's layers because, like I said, everything is a fog. It's a veil in this world. It's like covering the spiritual. And a lot of times it's not easy to see unless you actually are a seeker of it or you start to peek behind the veil. And it's difficult to discern what is a spiritual awakening, what's really just your ego messing around with you. So yes, absolutely. Ravenpaw. I'm brand new to discovering this path, and I always thought we were meant to coexist, not take over. Yeah. Well, that's the Elven way for sure. And I agree with that. And so when I read that, I was like, that's it. Like that's exactly what has been more, I guess, my path. And I understand what Tolkien is trying to kind of warn humanity subtly about, is that there's a real power, there's a quiet, subtle power in being a co-creator with nature, with the universe, instead of trying to be the creator of the universe. You can create within your own life, and you are the creator of your own universe. But if anything I have ever said has been taken the wrong way to say that you are a creator of the universe, that's not exactly what I have meant. It is more about your own inner universe. I cannot control you. I cannot create your life, and you certainly can't do that to mine. So there's a real power there, because God is like the bridge between all the souls. And that's how I see it, as like, yes, I know it's the God of the gap argument that atheists like to make, but it's true, because there is a power that connects us together. And we have moments of clarity where we do realize that coexistence, as Raven said. Pandora, agreed. It gives people an entitled seeming ego, an excuse essentially to act out just my thoughts. Yes. So beyond hanging out in nature, I've also watched a lot of unsolved mysteries. Oh, I'm so happy that show is back on Netflix. I cannot tell you. I love unsolved mysteries. So I have watched all the new ones, or the ones that have entered back onto Netflix. They're not really new. Take a look at Berkshire's UFO one, by the way, episode 4 or 5. It is phenomenal. But I've watched the old unsolved mysteries, just doing my own thing during the day and just having it on in the background. And what I'm constantly put up against, which is a real internal struggle, is because I'm here in my place of consciousness, yet here is a girl that gets kidnapped, at 11 o'clock at night by these two gentlemen, thrown in the back of a car, and then ends up being killed on the beach. And then, Unsolved Mysteries is about trying to solve these crimes. And what I realize is that there is a power that is higher than those men. Of course, there's a power that is higher than that girl. There's a really interesting story with that particular one episode. I don't remember what it was called. But she was constantly telling her mother that she was going to die at the age of 16. She said, I'm not going to be here. I know I'm not going to make it past 16. And so she wrote a letter a couple weeks before her death. And it was basically a goodbye letter. Not that she was suicidal, but she really felt inside that it was her time. So that, to me, starts pointing towards this. It's not necessarily that she is creating that, and she's not creating the experience of being killed, but there is a type of divine consciousness and reality that is playing out. And there are certain players that are part of that. And it is very much like Eru's theme that is going on. And we are all part of this collective. And there's a power that is higher than those men. There's a power that is higher than Donald Trump. There is a power that is higher than anyone on earth right now. And when we really look at that and we think about that, that's when we get to the truth. Because if we just look at individuals on earth right now and we try to visualize God in individuals, we'll get lost, because the ego's there, and it's a minefield of unawakenings and its unconscious actions, as well as maybe some glimmers of truth. But that takes many, many years of seeking, and also lives of reincarnation, where you keep on learning and you keep on developing your soul until you get to a lifetime where you're born And you just have this knowledge already within you. And so when you're a child, you're very wise. And then that's because you have reincarnated, because you have learned some spiritual truths in your last lifetime. So you enter into the world already knowing what you know, and you may have forgotten it. And so it takes just a little bit of nudging from the powers that be to remind you of yourself, your true self. So your higher self is also not quite it. It's a power, I think, that gets you in touch with this universal consciousness that is in charge of nature and the universe and the laws of physics, but it's still not all the way. And I think that that is something that I just have been contemplating a lot. And yes, entitlement, Pandora. Entitlement is what happens when people think that they can murder others, or they can take from others, or they can be a tyrant and control others. There is an entitlement. And so when you believe in a power that is higher than you can't be entitled, or you're submissive in a way. I'm not a submissive person, but you're submissive in a way where you cannot take control over others. You cannot dictate and play God in this world, because there is already a source of existence that is already playing that part. And it's really a second awakening, I call it. Roxanne, as individual minds connect, the stream becomes the river. Though each drop thinks they are insignificant, just being a part of the river, in time it becomes a flood, and we can turn greed to community. Well said. That is beautiful. Yes, I agree. And just at that part right there where you said, just being a part of the river, that's exactly it, is that some people think like they have to be the river. So there's a lot of videos right now. I don't know if you've seen them on YouTube. I've just kind of seen them in passing, but I haven't really gotten a chance to listen. But some people are talking about how spirituality is fake, or spirituality is unreal, in the sense that when you lead a life of spiritual practice, whether it be meditation or prayer or study academically or whatever, it's fake. It's false in a way, because you're chasing after something that you already are. But actually, it goes along with what Roxanne is saying. It's that the reason why we are chasing after this knowledge about something else beyond ourselves is because the ego cannot understand itself as part of the river. It wants to see itself as the whole river. So there's this lack of community and harmony that the ego plays. And so when the ego starts to let go, stop wanting to be so in control, stop wanting to control the river or be the river, and allow other drops to form the river with you, that is the true spirit of harmony, of co-creation, and community, as you said. Those three things, harmony, community, and co-creation, is a more peaceful new earth, rather than one where we know that we are all gods, because there are going to be individuals that take it too far. There are going to be individuals that are thinking they're more of a god than you are. So it becomes a war of gods. It's kind of what happened, I believe, in the past civilizations like Atlantis and even Lemuria, is that once a species reaches a state of spiritual awakening, they can go the opposite way, where they actually are, they awaken in a false kind of way, a false light. It's a false sense of illumination. And then that's what leads to destruction, to war, to fights, because there's a superiority that is now there based on the knowledge that you are God. And that's what happened in Atlantis. So we don't want to go and make that same mistake, because I do feel that that is happening. So Zach's will, careful how you allow the word ego to implant upon mind. Ego persona are being misunderstood as arrogance and the other forms of elitism. So I have a video about that. Whenever, it's very early on in my channel, whenever I say ego, it is strictly your subjective experience. It has nothing to do with arrogance. That's not how I use it. And yes, I did do a video about that because I know that that can become the way. But if arrogance is just ego imbalanced, that's it. So arrogance is ego when it becomes imbalanced and it's ego over other egos. That's when it becomes arrogance. But ego itself that is balanced with the collective, that doesn't see itself as God over others, that is just your subjective experience. It's just you having a unique experience. So yes, there is a difference, but yeah, it's a thin line. But that's definitely something I did talk about early on my channel, because I know I do talk about ego a lot, and I don't mean it to be arrogance. Noreen, New World Order is what we are currently in. It's code for global corporate hegemony. Yeah, I mean, I do believe that we have a collective consciousness kind of power where we can alter the type of new world order that we see. But we do have to kind of start working fast in a way, because it does seem like it is going. I mean, the whole quarantine, I know that it was easy for some, or at least it was maybe not a hard experience for some, but a lot of people really suffered. A lot of them did, especially those that could not find any type of money at the time, and were having a hard time just trying to survive. And so the quarantine, I think, is the first step to that. That's why I say that we kind of have to start moving in terms of what we consciously want to create. And this might mean standing up to ideas that start to not align to us, that try to oppress our individuality and our freedoms. So as soon as we start to see that, that's when we can start to, I think, make the stand, really take a stand for our individual rights. Zach's will, we are beholden to the knowledge and the expression of such, not the house or path from which attempts consolidation of the knowledge as weapons in this age of war. I like that. Noreen, I agree. The current leaders should not become global hegemons. Indeed. Good point. Yes. Yeah. I think I just sense that there's not quite a spiritual awakening within those leaders, and we need to see that happening first before we can start to allow a new kind of unifying world. And I'd have to say that I'm leaving the doorway open, because I'm watching closely about the speeches of the UN and Congress, and I want to see, who becomes president and all of that. And I'm watching very closely to see, are we entering a new phase of spirituality, and do we have representatives that represent the spiritual consciousness shift in the masses, or are we still having this imbalance of power in terms of the spiritually unawakened in places of power, which is probably where they end up anyway, because people that usually do have a spiritually awakened state of mind, they don't want power, they don't want control. So that's probably what happens. They find those positions because there already are the asleep ones. And some of them want to change the world, and they have good intentions, but a lot of evil is paved on the pathway of good intentions, as Tolkien was saying. Noreen, it's not that you are God, but that this all is God. It's called pantheism and Gaia theory. Yes, this is all God. Yes. And there is a difference, because when you start to say, well, this is all God, it can be a lot more all-encompassing rather than thinking that you are God. So there is a difference there, and I have experienced that. I'm glad you put that there. Bryant, you are appreciated for spreading our work one person at a time. All it takes is changing the one mind that changes the world. You are one of many water barriers that I admire. I am with you always. Oh, good. I'm glad. What is your work? The great work? Is it from this? I'll say this. I am not working to spread any type of, I guess, fundamental ideology. But if I happen to connect to minds that have the spirit of harmony, community, and freedom in place in their consciousness, then I will naturally connect minds with them, because that's where I am. Roxanne, as Tolkien showed, just as the Valar, we are each thoughts of Eru's mind, like cells of the body, sparks of his light. Exactly. Exactly. And I like that. I really like that thought. Miss Jamie, hello all, late to the party. Yes, welcome. Yes, we're chatting away. We're chatting away here. Noreen, if you view everything as always groovy and loving when the opposite is true, and you're unwilling to engage the ego to help change it, then we are not avoiding our ego, we are enabling others' visions. Yeah, exactly. I would not say that I think everything is groovy. In fact, I'm very aware that the other side, the other dark side. But I myself like to put forwards the energy of love, forwards the positive energy. That's what I choose to bring into the world, not the darkness and the other parts of unconscious actions that I do see and I do recognize. Yes, I do. And that's why I do watch Unsolved Mysteries, because I have my eyes on this other side of life. Force Night Star. Chiron and Dark Moon in Aries with Mars. For everyone going through their dark night of the soul, you aren't alone. Yeah, my Chiron is within Taurus. That's how I was born in my natal chart. And that's a very powerful placement for me, in particular, the wounded healer. And, Chiron was the teacher of Achilles and many other types of characters within ancient Greece. And so I think that right there, that it symbolizes reaching a place of teaching or guidance within yourself, and then realizing that there's a next level, that you are always learning. So it's a great experience. Zach's will, arrogance has reigned long enough. Compassion needs to be strived for. I agree. Compassion is really key. And this is kind of what I've been doing a lot of research on. And I have really kind of cracked the code in a way, like in my own mind, of seeing there's a pattern that exists, that it is about compassion. It really is about friendship, compassion, and love that is going to change the world in the way that we really want it to, in terms of breeding out crime, humanity against humanity. It is going to be about teaching compassion at an early age and instilling those types of qualities, those traits of understanding that. And that's really important. And I think that, when we get to that point where everybody can employ those compassionate ideals towards those that are the dregs of society, or those that, seem like they shouldn't have compassion, that's when we start turning everything around. Because the real reason why people commit crime in the first place is because they feel unloved. They feel that the world has basically just taken advantage of them, and that they don't that no one really cares about them. And so it starts to manifest as anger and as hatred towards others. And then that's when you get the serial killers and other types of murders. So this is one way that we start to get rid of crime at a very young age, is when we really start to, just really be more mindful as what we are putting out into the world, and with our younger generations as well. Compassion is key, not revenge, not even a sense of justice, because justice can be taken the wrong way. And it is about compassion and healing that will really change things. I really do agree. Nice comment, Axwell. I'm glad you put that out there. We have to move forward, put forward our mind's vision with a goal to help others. Yes, we do. And we have to realize that we are co-creating, so it helps with the frustration. If you think that you are only supposed to do it yourself, it can help when you start to realize that you're not a nowhere man, and that you have friends around you, and that you are here to connect to others. And I think that that is really one of the most important things. Co-creating, that's beautiful. Well, welcome. Yes, co-creating. That is definitely what I am going to focus on. And I have really gotten in touch with this power. When you sit outside in nature, you realize you're actually co-creating. You're existing in this ecosystem as one organic form within this ecosystem, but you're not creating the tree. You're not creating the flower. I mean, at some level of existence, we can say on a consciousness level, beyond space-time, that yes, we can say we are all creating this experience to have. But when you can fall back and surrender into a power, you eliminate that need of responsibility and manifestation on this earthly level, and you become more powerful within this humility. And it's a really great feeling, and not powerful in a way where it's about domination, but powerful in the way that you no longer feel like, you're powerless or helpless within your own life to change, but that you have support, you have guidance, and you have support coming from something else, another source, not just your own reserve, but another type of reserve that's out there, that's as big and vast as the universe. Noreen, you seem to be flirting with the difference between left-hand path and right-hand path. Well, as a mystic, I walk in between, I guess. I would say that I don't ever engage in dark magic or black magic that takes in order to, that is about taking from energy and then putting it into you or something. It's not about that. I'm definitely more of interested in putting energy out there and charging, but I would say that I can understand both pathways in a way where I don't come from a judgmental place. So I'm just kind of non-judgmental about it because I understand where it comes from. But no, I wouldn't support using dark magic. I think there's a lot of spiritual consequences with that. Antarian complex. Everybody is on both paths. It's all about what you contribute to the most. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just what I focus on is the right hand path. Nurin, I guess I am more left hand, although I have a lot of light and care about my fellow man. I have a strong opinion of what should go on. What I have found is that most people like Aleister Crowley and those that are known to have dabbled in the left hand or, that can appreciate it, they are just actually anarchists. They're activists in many ways. They have something to say about society. They have something to say about religion. And so they seem to get more pleasure with getting out these feelings of revenge, frustration, and generally being unhappy with society. And that was Aleister Crowley's point of view. His perspective of religion was terrible. And so he claimed that he was the beast because he wanted to be the beast in a way. He wanted to symbolize that breakdown of religion because that was what was frustrating him. So I don't find that that's a peaceful way of living either. I know that for some people it can be very satisfying, but to me, I just prefer to be far less stressed out than that. So the idea of the right-hand path to give light, to be a source of light in that way, and to dabble in magic that only really is about creation and working in that way with white magic and all that. That to me comes from a place of just wanting to experience less drama, less drama. And light to me is really just working from a place of awakening and consciousness, mindfulness, and not in a path of anger, which can be a very, very powerful, spirit to work with. But it's just not my style. But I'm glad that you put it out there, because I think that other people need to see that those who follow the left-hand path are not necessarily, bad or evil in any kind of way, but it's just the way that you wield a certain type of energy. That's really what magic is, using your will and your intention. It's about your relationship to the world, right? So when you're coming at magic, it's a neutral force, but what your relationship is with that magic is really what makes it dark or light. And it's the relationship that we have with whatever our focus is. And a lot of times it's about this world, trying to have change in our own lives as well as in this world. When I sit in nature, I feel great. Then I remember the trees being felled by the lumber tycoons. Yes, exactly. And then that's when that anger comes up. And that's also the path of the dark fairies too. They represent that anger towards humans, for destroying the natural environment. So that is the dark fairies versus the light fairies that are more understanding, trying to have more compassion. Poor humans, they don't understand how they're connected to the trees and how they need the trees. So it is about that difference there, but all come from the same source, right? Or Wyndon, thank you for joining. I know you have to go now, but I'm glad that you popped on. Keep giving out your thoughts in Elven Light Path group. We love hearing them. Antarian Complex. The lefties have their merits. Opportunists bring good people together. It's up to themselves. After that, sometimes it's best to be selfish for selfless reasons. I like that. Yeah, there's moments in time where I've definitely been selfish. I would definitely agree. And that's just it, coming from the subjective experience. We are in this ego, and it's best to just surrender and just to understand where it comes from. And in that moment of surrender to a greater power outside of that selfishness, because this power is not selfish, right? It wants the best for everything equally. And is that you all the time? No, it's not. It can be, though. It can be. But there's a switch sometimes that happens where you're pulled back into your life and your subjective experience. And then you can enter back into this place of more of the objective look on everything. But yeah, it's definitely good, I think, to be selfish for the right reasons. But I always see it as if you're selfish for the right reasons, it actually means that you're servicing the collective in a way. It's like you're getting better, you're getting something so that you can help others in return. Roxanne Victor. A diverse world where we celebrate every variety of being, where we assist the needs of every form of life for the benefit of all. Yep, I agree. And I guess I was doing this video because it made me think, like, somebody said on the last video, and I know they were joking about the Borg, how when I talk about the collective mind, I'm talking about like the Borg of Star Trek, and I finally did watch it. No, I don't. I'm not exactly envisioning the Borg idea or a collective mind, but I believe that the collective mind, whenever I visualize it, it is freedom. It really is. And I know that it's a really strange concept because you have a collective mind. So, how can this element of freedom be there? But the freedom comes from our individual choices in our lives and all that we experience, like the sparks of the rays of consciousness that we all are. And so, that is freedom in a collective mind. And so within that, there is still diversity and there is unity, but it's through diversity. It's through the power of diversity and freedom. And so that's what I have always meant with the collective mind. Zach's will. Oh, yes, beautiful. I'm so happy to hear this, priestess. Trust yourself and allow the light of yourself to shine upon this realm. Namaste. Let's see more. Rain. Some people have 2 Kundalini awakenings. Yeah, I mean, there are layers upon layers of spiritual awakenings. I guess you can have as many awakenings as it takes for you to just remember your true self in terms of you as a co-creation, a co-creator, and also your power to create within your life too, because sometimes we can get to this place, and this is the problem with religion that we have, is that we do have some souls within religion that have been born into a system where they are completely powerless, I've seen the documentaries where now we have Jehovah's Witness and other types of religious groups that are now being actually called cults. Now, not every religion is actually ran like a cult, but when you strip away the power or the individual rights and you have to follow a set of religious standards, it can become a cult-like experience because you're oppressing the individuality. So a lot of people that have grown up in religion, what they are doing now is trying to find their power. Thank goodness I did not grow up in a religion where I have always been able to kind of get in touch with my individual power because I wasn't afraid of tapping into that. But now I'm going another way where although I have tapped into my individual power, I am tapping into a co-creation collective power. And it is really blowing my mind and it's beautiful. And I think that is really kind of where I'm at. Christina, I hope the world's vibration rises to love and enlightenment in the future, and it starts with us as individuals. All our individual paths will meet. All our individual paths will meet there. I hope so too, Christina, and I believe it too. I do. I think that we're playing this part right now with our anxiety and our fear and our hopefulness. But deep down inside, I know that life can only go a certain pathway where our consciousness goes. And so if we ourselves are individuals that hold that space that you're talking about, I really do see that our future will enter into that. Not maybe everybody, because everybody's going to be individuals, right? We're not going to be hive minds going into this new earth. But I think that if we hold the space now, that can ensure us and the people around us and the people that grow up in our household, our children, that is where we are helping the next generation. And that is the spiritual evolution of the species. Pandora, I'm so glad you showed me that show, Kimberell. It is so enlightening. I'm glad. Pandora is talking about the Midnight Gospel, the Netflix series, if some of you have seen it. I do recommend it. I think it is very odd, and the animation it's a little bit crazy. It's like a trip on mushrooms or something, but it's I think that it's very powerful because it is conversations about meditation, about mindfulness, about psychedelics, about death, about reincarnation, and about creation and manifestation. It's all of these spiritual, new age of Aquarius topics that are kind of thrown into a cartoon. So he's doing a space cast and he's going around to different planets around the universe. And he's meeting all these different types of souls to interview. And at the same time, you're watching this crazy cartoon where, there's always a lot going on. It can be kind of gory. It's kind of strange. It's like Adventure Time. But I think that the message behind it is powerful. So if you can pay attention to the words, and what I do is I put on the captions and I read the words as I'm watching the cartoon. Otherwise, I can focus just on the colors and what's going on in the cartoon. So I think that it is a show that really does reflect this new age. But like I said, that one point where Clancy hits that stage of enlightenment, he becomes enlightened. He's like, I'm enlightened now. And he, it's just so funny because that's what can happen, with your experience. And then you realize, oh, wait a minute, there's something else beyond that. Forest Nightstar. Ooh, I like how you said this. Now is the time to begin shining and not hiding our light anymore to benefit the world, and we are all connected. I absolutely agree. And that's, I think, why I'm just being so open and so transparent, because it's not about shining perfectly, right? Like, we don't want to try to invent an image of ourselves and then try to shine perfectly. We want to be who we are and shine from that place. And that's how we shine. And this is the ultimate beautiful truth, is that each one of you are supposed to shine in your own individual ways. And so when we do it authentically through really the truth of ourselves, it's just like a beautiful thing to see. And I really do agree that's how the world starts changing. YouTube is very helpful in this way. And if any of you want to start a YouTube channel, I think this is a really great thing that I really wanted to say to those that want to start a channel. Just be yourself, just be authentically you. And those are the channels that you start to see catch on. Because people are looking for that sense of openness, that transparency, no matter how strange you might be. I think that honesty and just being who you are for everyone to see is something that really is needed in the world. And that's where you start to shine, your individual light. And it's just so wonderful to see that happening. I'm glad you said that, Forest Nightstar. Zach's Will, isn't that and has been going on? I see that as the Avenue War is using. Oh, what did you say? You're going to have to remind me. Oh, about the Atlantis idea, about how, well, Pandora, you're saying all leads back to the law of one. Yes, the law of one. And yet it's not my law of one. It's the law of one. And that's a beautiful, way to look at it. I think more powerful of an experience personally for me. I know that some people might enjoy thinking about it as the other way around. But yes, I see it that way. Rain, our internal guidance system. Yeah, our intuition, our higher self, our higher voice. It's not completely just ours, right? It's connected to the universal consciousness. And Zach's Will, yes, Ra and Thor are my guides. Oh, Thor, the Norse god. Yes. The law of one, which talked about in here, was the Hermes Trismegistus. So Thoth, right? From ancient Egypt. I think that was the Emerald Tablets. And then the law of one, and also the Ra, as also had some information too from ancient Egypt. And I forgot that document that I read about Ra. It was like the Ra documents or Ra messages, something of that message. Maybe Ra actually wrote the Law of One, and Hermes Trismegistus was something else in here. I read it on my introduction because they put that forwards, but they did talk about the Law of One. So that was something that was very much known in ancient Greece and in ancient Egypt through the priestcraft, and something that had been traveling around in the mystery schools, and of course hidden, from the eyes of the church, because that would be a problem. Because the Law of One could be taken in the wrong way. And I do want to read this because this is a comment that I did take a picture of. So I was listening to Eckhart Tolle and Russell Brand's video about, it's called Awake Now, and I highly recommend people to listen in on it because Eckhart Tolle is just going off in terms of laying it all out there and giving everybody, all of his spiritual knowledge that he has acquired. It's just a wonderful, wonderful video. And Russell Brand is pretty much speechless during the whole thing. And it's amazing to watch because Russell Brand, as a Gemini, he's always so full of words and thoughts. And, I love listening to him. But this video is different because you can see the penetration of the words of Eckhart Tolle acting as a higher mirror to all of us in many ways. And one of the things I really appreciate about Eckhart Tolle is that he has been an ego warrior, kind of a warrior for non-existence in a way, where he talks about ego, not in a negative way, but in a way that, we're supposed to try to get to a point where we can allow both to exist, our egos to exist, as well as remind ourselves of this other part of ourself that is not dictated by the ego's desires. And so there's this quote here, not a quote, a comment. There was a couple comments. So this man says, New Age leads people to pursue the higher self and to ultimately believe that they are God. This is the lie told in the garden by the devil just before the fall. There is indeed absolute truth. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but me. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be open to you. I believe that we are living on the last days. Seek God while you still can. John 3:16. So you might see a lot of these comments about the New Age because there is this concern. And so a lot of religious people might try to bring people back to God when they are saying they are God or we are God, or basically speaking something that is not necessarily in direct alignment with what you learn through the churches, that there is God that is above you, and then you're supposed to, be in service to it, or you were supposed to worship. And so there's this discrepancy that happens between those who are religious and those who are spiritualists of the New Age in terms of how that is perceived. But we must remember that Jesus and even the other ascended masters have always pointed to the way that deep, 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 deep down inside, well past the ego, well past this earth, when you shed the soul from the body and when you rejoin back with the all, where you originated from before this incarnation, ye are gods. Ye shall know ye are gods. And the idea that we are part of this universal consciousness. So it's not that God is separate, which is the demiurge, or the idea what the Gnostics were complaining about, is that the Bible talks more about the demiurge rather than the true God. And so that was the difference between the Gnostics and the Christians or the Catholics. But we have to start to bridge that gap So where is that medium ground? That's where I think we have to understand, because we get comments on an Eckhart Tolle video about coming back to God. Don't listen to New Age ideas. But where is the bridge? Because somewhere we're going to have to meet in the middle. And so where is that bridge? Is it the Christians and Catholics are going to start to understand what the Trinity is about, or what Jesus was saying on spiritual levels? And then is it those that are thinking more kind of the New Age idea of just maybe almost like Solapism, where just the mind is God, only their mind is God. So then they have to somehow meet in the middle somewhere. And then there has to be some kind of compromise. Otherwise, we're always going to be at war. And that comment is just that one example. I mean, it was done in a polite way, but you can see this resistance right there to an Eckhart Tolle video on spirituality. There is still religious resistance. So how do we get past that resistance is really the next kind of, I guess, problem to overcome together. Roxanne, well said. Natural law versus man's law. Exactly. Natural law. Natural law is different than man's law. And you can see that because man's law is embedded with ego, and it's a subjective experience by whoever is the lawmaker. But nature's law is an ecosystem, and everything has its rightful place, and everything has its role in that ecosystem, and it's really an equal balance. And so there's an imbalance right now with the way that our systems work, our societal systems work. And this is kind of why we have a little bit of a revolution going on in a kind of a subtle way, but you start to see it, that it's definitely happening. Marguerite, I was watching a show on Gaia that explained it to me. We are all a perspective, a point in time and space. All our point of views matter in that they all teach us. Yes, that's a great way of looking at it. It's the perspective. And it's about our freedom as individuals and honoring each of those perspectives. There was a beautiful, beautiful quote that I actually found by an ancient mystic. Let's see if I can find it for you. I was going to post it, but I'll just share it here because it just makes so much sense. If I can find it. And it is about... oh, isn't that funny? I was going to do a video on the Truman Show, actually, because I thought that had a lot of truth to it. And there's a lot of Gnostic symbolism within it. So maybe I'll get to that one day, but that's kind of what I was looking at before. This quote, man, I wish I had it ready before I got excited about it. It was, I think it was by Heves, I think, and who's like a Sufi, like a mystic Sufi. And I think he was from Turkey. I think that's where he was originally from. And the quote is, "Did you know everyone is God? Then why don't you listen to everyone?" So it is a really interesting quote in the idea of that by honoring everyone's perspectives and listening, really listening to everyone, you get to see all those points of perspectives put together. And I guess if you had to take all the soul's perspectives and you put them together, you would get a picture of what God is. That would be what really it is. It's all the perspectives together, points of view. So the key to peace would really be to start listening to each other. And so I was accused of, some people were upset because I seemed to be folding under the idea of Black Lives Matter. And they were saying that I was placating to a particular group. That's not how I saw it. It was particularly just to show that I was listening, that I was hearing their perspective and coming in solidarity with them in that moment in time. And that, I think, was really the importance, because I was taking some time and really kind of doing a lot of research about Black Lives Matters. And what I realized is that they wanted, especially whites, those are also who are non-Blacks in terms of part of their community and part of that type of that past in America. They wanted people to listen. That's all they wanted. And listening required watching movies and documentaries. I went on a couple posts. I went onto sites, and some people say, well, that's just them trying to start something, but I was listening to the other perspective. So it doesn't really matter what my opinions are in that place. It's just an exercise in listening to the other perspectives. And that's kind of what practice that I am starting to employ. I'm trying to listen to the other person's perspectives, because I realize that when we only see our own perspective, our own opinion, and they only see their perspective and their own opinion, then nothing changes. But when we stop to listen to each other, when we really honor the divine light within each other and listen to each perspective, as Marguerite said, that is when we start to connect to each other, connect those points and lines. And that's when really true progress happens in terms of peace and compromise, because understanding is really what people are after, just to understand and see their point of view, to validate their feelings, to validate their experience. So no, I was not placating to Black Lives Matters by dressing up and actually going out and marching. I was just listening. I was just listening and showing that I was listening. And I felt that that was really important for me to do. And it didn't really have anything to do with my own opinions, but it was rather just, what are they saying as a community? And even though some of the Black Lives community might be saying something else, or some of the Black community might be saying something else and like, oh, don't listen to Black Lives Matters or whatever, I was listening to the stories that were coming from people that were standing in front of people during the marches and basically giving their perspective. Like the girl that was in charge of the march that I took part in, she gave me her perspective of how she is afraid of wearing a hoodie at night because of the way that she looks, and that she has had cops stop her on the streets, or she has had cops pull her over in cars. So that is her perspective. And I'm giving her space to honor that perspective in that point in time. So I just wanted to talk about that, because Marguerite, that is a very, very good idea that they were teaching, because that's very true. That's how I see it. And so with this practice of listening to other perspectives, guess what? I'm getting closer in union to this source. I feel it spiritually, whether that means, whatever happens in the future for me, it means that I am experiencing oneness with the divine by listening to all perspectives on earth as much as I can in terms of all the perspectives that come into my immediate circle of experience. And Tarian, thanks for the wisdom. I have a dream to dream. I wish you all with blessings. You too. Thank you for joining us today, and sweet dreams. I really appreciate you stopping by. I know it might be late for some of you, so I'm glad that you could jump on. Yamin, looking at you, I just love your channel and your content. I'm completely in love with the Fae. They have become my whole life. I'm beginning to see them fully manifested all the time now. Oh, that is so amazing. Yes, I've had some real great experiences just being out in nature during the summertime. It's just been amazing. And I think, honestly, I do have that to attribute this experience to, is the fairies. Because when you think about it, the fairies act as spirits that are outside of maybe the human race and are part of the earth as elementals. And so they are also part of the source of energy, but they're not you, they're a part of you, and we're a part of it. And it's a really humbling place. And so, yes, the fairies definitely just help me remember so many things. Roxanne, Victor, unity is the key. Prime Source wants us to love one another as ourselves because that is the truth of our creation, cells of the one. I love that. I'm so happy that there's so much wisdom in the comments for people to read afterwards. This is great. Yeah. And this is a nice one here. Yes, Narin, that's great. I support the Black Lives Movement. It's okay to do so. You can never make everyone happy. It's true. It's true. And I guess I can't make everyone happy, but I can certainly explain my intentions more. And I guess with explaining my intentions more, it only reiterates kind of what has been this journey into listening, and finding my way back to this oneness. What I hope to establish throughout the years on my channel, and it is really that the union with the divine is it's not a mental practice. It's not magic induced, although it can help you. It's not really any of that except for a embracing and a letting go of, your ego. And in doing so, there is a really beautiful sense of release there, but also to embrace your ego too. So we're going to have fun with that. I'm learning to have fun with that. I am dressing up my ego. I am enjoying my self-identity and expressing my self-identity more and more, but I'm also allowing myself to understand the perspectives of others. So that is a gentle balance of self-expression and also of ego warriorness that I hope to obtain, and really is the message of my channel in many ways. So I guess that's really what I want, and I hope to achieve more with this book here, The Alchemy and Mysticism, through this experience. Okay, so Ty, people really just get tired of being hurt when they give so much love. Okay, so you hit on something huge. So this is part of it too. Remember how I was talking about reservoir of energy? So when you are in your place of just your subjective experience or your ego, you only can tap into so much love, right? Because you can only give the amount of love that you have received, that you have cultivated, you have stored up inside of yourself, and that you are open to receive. Because you could have a life experience that, and we know this about people that have committed heinous crimes and people that, seem like they're just angry with the world and they're feeling bitter, they feel like they're unloved. So that is exactly it, is that it's the tiredness from expecting so much from others and feeling like you're giving so much of yourself and yet you don't get anything in return. But guess what? When you tap into a power that is more loving, more creative, and more higher in terms of knowledge and perspective than your ego self, and you tap into this power that is connected to nature and to the universe at large, you have all of a sudden this great reservoir of love within you. Then you're unafraid to give love because you know that you are only giving love, and it's not something that you are lacking inside, but it comes from this unlimited, boundless source within the universe. And so you're absolutely right. You cannot really give unconditional love, boundless love, or endless love from a place of ego, because your ego is what has gotten you hurt or feels hurt. And then also you tell yourself stories that you cannot give to others, or that you're afraid of giving to others, or, all the other stories that we tell ourselves. But when you tap into this energy that is unafraid, then you're unafraid. And so that is a really big switch that I would say has happened in my life over the last, I would say maybe like the last 5 years or so. I've experienced that. And I have been somebody who used to have really high expectations for others, because I would be constantly, giving love and hoping to see it return back. And when I realized that I am looking, that the most important relationship is really with the universe and with the world and with myself, then I stopped expecting so much from others. And then I don't get hurt anymore, which I know is a very a hard place to be at, because I used to be there. Marianne Lyric, see someone truly seen, and hearing someone is very powerful, especially anyone who is used to being seen falsely or ignored altogether. I agree. Just the idea of, if you can find some sense of familiarity in some of my words, or feel like you're not alone in some of your thoughts, I think that that's a really powerful feeling. And it's one that I would like to help create in others, because as co-creation, with you, because I too have been looking to not feel alone or in that way. And so I think that it's a powerful thing. And if you're ignored altogether, if you have someone that is speaking your language, speaking your sense of understanding of the world and of the universe, you won't feel ignored. You'll feel understood. And I think that that's the opposite of ignored, is being seen and noticed. And yes, namaste. I see you. So Ty, and not everyone from the groups are giving love, but you're right. The listening and trying to understand helps from both ends, all ends, to get more closer to the creator. Yes, that's exactly it. It's about listening to other people's stories and not judging them, not trying to come up with opinions about their experience, but just listen to their experience. And it's not necessarily like you can't think. I don't want you to say, oh, well, I can't have any judgments listening to experience, because you will naturally. But it's also about trying to catch yourself trying to have opinions about something that you don't know firsthand. And that's kind of what, I was really trying to say. Ravenpaw, one of my favorite quotes is, anyone can slay a dragon, she told me, but try waking up in the morning and loving the world all over again. Ooh, that's what it takes, a true hero. I love that. That is beautiful. And that's so true. Like, yes, love is a far more powerful force. It takes a lot more, I think, energy, instead of just always being aggressive or angry or revengeful or anything else that you would have to do to slay a dragon, but to wake up and to love the world. That's very true. There was a beautiful quote that I saw in a movie called The Mystical Laws. It's an anime, and I might do a video on it because I really did enjoy it. But he talks about at the end how the world is full of so many souls that make mistakes again and again. They seem to come from a very unconscious place, and it's very frustrating. But this character says he loves them nonetheless because they are his fellow beings. And this is something that he kind of has a spiritual awakening about. And I think that oneness of love is really powerful, because really we don't change anything with anger or hate. We really change things with love and understanding. Pandora, I've heard it best that expectations are the ego's way of putting energy, either positive or negative, into the outcome, thus affecting it whatever way you choose to put energy. Exactly. The Stoicism belief, and I really love this, is the idea that you should be happy with whatever outcome happens. And they liken it to the idea of shooting a bow and arrow. And what you end up doing is, if you miss the target, you can be happy. If you hit the target, you can be happy. But if you set expectations that you're only going to be happy if you hit that bullseye, then you're going to not always be happy. But if you can see your happiness in either the experience of your loss or even in the experience of your wins, this honestly is about being really not attached to either outcome, as you said, but coming from it from a place of, opportunity and growth, and also just positive experiences. And that's really how I've been living my life. I'm not really attached to any type of outcome that happens, but just seeing where the wind blows. Miss Jamie, thank you, Kimbrell. Deep gratitude for all you give a voice to. Oh, namaste. I'm glad you joined, Miss Jamie. I'm glad you did. Ravenpaw, the quote was from Brian Andreas. From the quote you left, yes, anyone can slay a dragon, she told me, but try waking up in the morning and loving the world all over again. That's wonderful. I'm glad that you have that down there so people can remember that. It's a wonderful motto to keep in mind, because you could wake up daily and just remember, okay, today I'm going to love the world. And it's true. I'll do a shorter video about it, but I wanted to do a video about your relationship, to the world, because that has a lot to do with the timeline choices that we make, and what our relationship is to the world. Are we constantly seeing this invisible enemy that we have to fight in the world? Are we constantly battling others? Are we, what is your relationship to the world is so important about what kind of experience you have, what kind of timeline you exist on, and ultimately what kind of dimension of consciousness that you exist in. And so I will do a video on that more. But this was a really great, I think, a chance for me to talk about this, because I know that maybe some of you might be experiencing this. And hey, I just put it out there because I know that there is a little bit of I think, a warning in terms of how far do we take it, where we are all claiming to be God individually from the place of ego, all the individual egos that we are at, or instead of saying that, why don't we actually focus on how to be servants to this greater force that is the creator of the laws of nature and that have set in motion everything around us. And I think that when you're one with that energy, it takes you out of your ego, and out of your ego, you can experience true release, away from the chatter in your mind, away from your ego playing tricks on you, making enemies out in the world against you. And if you could just release that, you fall back into existence itself. And that really is true peace. And that is really what I am personally after, what I believe the Elven Light Path is about in terms of walking the pathway of the elves and being at this place of peace. It's not about trying to, as Tolkien said, to fight against our mortality, but to accept and embrace through the seasons and the cycles that our souls reincarnate in and through in this planet and this collective universe together. And when we can just experience that and let go of our ego, I'm telling you, it's a whole other experience that opens up. I just feel so peaceful and surrendered to a higher responsibility, a higher law. And now I can just be an active co-creator with it. I am a sub-creator, as Tolkien says in his books later on, or in his letters later on. He says that he wrote Lord of the Rings not as a creator himself, but as a sub-creator. He himself was creating with the collective this story about some truths that everyone needed to hear, and that it honored the one true God in terms of what is connecting us all, loves us all equally, and we are all part of, and we will return back to one day. And when we can remember that sense of humility and service to that source is just so freeing. It's a whole new level of peace. And I just wanted to offer that as an option for you in the new age, in terms of the way that you view God and existence. You can exist, and I will be an example of this. You can exist as someone who believes in a higher power and at the same time feels one with it and can still feel humble inside. And I believe that that is a state of mind and a state of being that I have reached that has given me true peace in life. And I just wanted to pass that along to you if you're looking for that. I hope that this inspires you in some way to allow you to feel your love for this creation, this creator, and also to allow you to openly express your love and to allow you to be okay with being in the middle place where you are spiritual, you believe in a higher power, but yet you're not part of a religion or you're not religious yourself, but there's a true devotion and a servitude within you as far as one that wants to help this source of life and all souls that are a part of it. And that is how you decide to walk your life. You know, that's your life path. And if that's your life path, that's going to be a good, peaceful life. And I'm really happy that I've gotten to this place, and I just want to share that that's where I'm at, and that's where I will be continuing further down this pathway, and who knows what will happen from there. From this place of co-creating, the magic of co-creation, I call it, has entered my life, and it has been a really amazing experience. And I want to say that it's always been part of my life, but I guess this is me at this point that is really happy to remember this again. And I feel like I've entered this new phase of spiritual awakening that has just given me more of a sense of peace, more of a sense of freedom, more of a sense of love and devotion to everything and everyone on earth and to the universe. And it's good to be alive, and I pass it on to you, and I wish you all the greatest joy and peace within you, and thank you all for joining my channel, and I hope to see you as a member of my channel, because I will be doing a private video soon, and we will be able to have more chats like this. So I'll see you all. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you all in the next video.